Google's getting old.
Lawyers,
So.
Guns, and Money with Ben Adams and Jeremy Feets on the drive.
Lawyers, guns, and money.
Yes, sir. It is brought to you by TheLawFirm.com. Ben Adams, Jeremy Feets, and Dr. Olchese is with us on Lawyers, Guns, and Money.
Yeah.
Did I?
That's good.
screw
You
it
got
up?
it. No, you got it right.
Is it Italian?
It is Italian.
Yeah, that's why. Once I get it, I got it because I'm Italian too.
You know, maybe
It's a
after
cool
the
name,
show, Dr.
Olchese.
Olchese should give you a little examination, by the way, in the old,
Oh, the old brain.
the old brain. What do you
Yeah,
think? Free?
sure.
I'll make sure he does it for free.
Or a lesson in Italian.
Yeah.
Now, the first one would be quicker.
Yeah, but I prefer the latter.
There you go.
Okay. So, guys, what we've had the doc in before to talk about this. First, Doc, explain what it is you do and how you're a concussion and
Who
brain
is
expert.
Dr. Olchese?
Exactly.
Well, I'm a neuropsychologist.
That's
and
it. Yeah.
That's it. I work with people that have had neurological insults, concussion injuries, brain injuries, strokes, sometimes
They're
tumors
called
in the brain.
insults. Like, hey, you got a small brain, a-hole. That's
Yeah,
an
yeah.
insult.
That's what you usually say to me when I
Yeah.
go on and on about Gary Johnson.
Absolutely.
I've never heard it called insult before.
Huh?
That's cool.
No, it's a term of art. Basically just, it's another word for, injury or event,
Mhm.
I suppose you could say, right?
Sure.
So I wanted to talk to Dr. Olchese. It's always great to have him on, and I wanted to ask him a couple of questions that I don't know all of the answers to. I know a little bit enough. I know enough to be dangerous on brain injury because I've handled lots of brain injury cases. But of course, Dr. Olchese is the real expert. I wanted to ask him a couple of things. One of them I was really curious about. You've probably seen, Steve, all of these, there's web advertisements, there's radio advertisements for things that they call neurotraining, like luminosity.com. Help your brain work better by playing these simple games.
Yeah.
Start your account at luminosity.com, that kind of stuff, right?
Oh, you've heard
And
that a lot of
I've
times.
heard that ad a lot. And I'm sure everyone who's listening to you on the radio and listening to this show has heard the ad a lot. It's on a lot. And then, I have school-age kids, and I had lunch the other day with someone who recommended, that instead of traditional tutoring for like homework help and stuff like that, that I take a look at this. There's apparently a company that's relatively new, and they sell franchises, and there's one in Santa Rosa, and it's called Learning RX. And the idea behind it is supposedly, again, instead of trying to help your kid do their homework, they could get trained using, games with pictures or whatever, brain games type things to help, supposedly, this is the theory, and I wanted to ask Dr. Olchese about it, to help with, neurological connections in the brain, to facilitate new connections, etc., so that you can train your brain to be better in different areas, whether it's processing or different areas. And I wanted to ask Dr. Olchese, is there any truth to this stuff? What's the science? Or is it just a latest sort of business fad to try and get people's money?
Yes.
That was a long question, though.
And a quick
Objection,
answer.
compound.
There's truth.
The answer was good.
Overruled.
The answer was good. Yes. To what though? And we'll never know.
There's truth to it, but just like anything, advertisers take it and make more out of it than what it's worth. So, for example, I heard, and I haven't verified this, but Lumosity had a class action lawsuit brought against them because they were manipulating the data to their clients to show them that they were actually improving in their brain when they may not be.
Really?
Yeah. Now I know that.
Why
but-
were we not a piece of that class
Yeah.
action?
Yeah, there you go. So I like to speak in analogies for whatever reason. So the analogy would be cognitive developed or computer developed cognitive software is about as effective as batting practices in baseball, and it is
Really?
effective.
It may be fun, but it's not that.
It may be fun, but it doesn't unless you're under good coaching.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily translate to what you do in a game, and that's the same with this Lumosity, or I'll take that name out of there. That's the same with any of the computer generated cognitive softwares, or actually any of the paper and pencil softwares. You can save yourself a lot of money by just doing things like playing Jeopardy along with the TV game TV game show, or doing Sudoku, paper and pencil, or
Makes sense.
or doing crossword puzzles or word searches. The bottom line is the brain is soft tissue, even though we don't like to call it a soft tissue injury.
Right.
It is like a muscle, and so the more we exercise it, the more the stronger it's going to get. But just like exercise, if we only exercise our right bicep, then the left bicep doesn't benefit. So, for example, there's been some new studies out that shows that if somebody plays consistently word games like crossword puzzles, they will get better at word vocabulary, but they won't necessarily get better at application of that word vocabulary outside of playing Scrabble. And they won't necessarily get better at mathematics or at numbers. If somebody practices numbers and arithmetic, they'll get better at arithmetic, adding and subtracting. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to generalize that to get better at algebra and trigonometry.
My suggestion is for everyone who's interested in this and keeping your brain sharp, get a talk show, a daily talk show for 3 hours that features 12 guests on 12 different topics, and try to get through that. There's smoke coming out of my ears every night at 6, but I think it's really helped my brain. Doc, what do you think?
It all has to be about
Absolutely.
you all the time, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Absolutely.
That's why it's called The Drive with Steve Jackson.
Oh, good call.
That's right. And just like exercise, we can just like regular exercise, we can over-exercise our brains without taking breaks.
Really?
And that's not necessarily going to be healthy for our brains because
Listen up,
of the
Steve.
neurochemistry within the brain.
Believe
Now, I
me,
guess
take breaks.
you know, in terms of the exercising the brain, you're going to get better at that area. I guess is there, because it seems to me that the selling feature, at least of the child tutoring or child brain development angle, is that instead of helping your child learn his multiplication tables and drilling those into his head, we'll do these brain games with them to enhance the neural connections that are responsible for, memorizing those, and therefore they'll get a longer and longer term benefit from developing that area of the brain instead of just memorizing those tables. And what do you think of that kind of pitch?
Again, there's a thread of truth to it. It's kind of schizophrenia, Whenever you listen to a schizophrenic, there's a thread of truth through the delusions, and you have to listen carefully for it. So sure, that is how we call it brain plasticity, but how we rebuild neural connections is by repeating specific neural connections. To tell you the truth, the two things that have been scientifically proven to increase brain growth, brain cell growth, is exercise and meditation. Not brain exercise, but physical exercise. So physical exercise, cumulative 30 to 60 minutes a day, over the day, cumulative over the day, increases dendrites on brain cells. And dendrites are the receptor end of each brain cell communicating to another brain cell. And mindfulness meditation, as little, if you will, as 2 10-minute sessions a day over a 2-week period, demonstrates remyelination of the axons of the nerve cells in the subcortical frontal system.
And that's all.
Geek alert!
Hold on a second here, Doc. Let me just replace something here. Just go with me for a second. What if I replace meditation with drinking liquor?
Well, you already have.
I
That
know.
obviously hasn't done any
Yeah,
good.
you
I
do
have
that every day.
My mileage
There's a poison.
is out of
There's a
control.
poison.
Except there's more than 2 10-minute sessions of you drinking liquor every day.
And a lot of liquor in 2 10-minute sessions.
Have you been
And
watching
instead
me?
of rebuilding the
Yes.
the myelin of the brain cells, you're stripping away at your brain cells.
Now, let me finish that. What that doesn't say, what that doesn't address, is how we then use these faster, stronger brain cells, and that requires the doing, the application of what we want to use our brain to. So, so the thing that's missing, I think, and what I used to do years ago when I was in Southern California, if we want to take a sports analogy of recovery, okay, the difference between, and it's hard to make the translation, but the difference between these athletes that get a concussion and return to play within a few weeks is they have an entire coaching staff and training staff watching them 24/7 and shutting them down and making them take breaks and applying their strategies to the specific thing that they're doing. Playing baseball or playing football, it doesn't mean that this guy is going to be able to perform on your radio talk show, even though he can get back to playing football after 7 concussions. What we find out is rehabilitation is very specific, and the thing that we don't have outside of that is the resources to provide this child, if we're talking about kids that even have learning disabilities, to provide them with a coach that works with them in the classroom, outside of the classroom, and helps train their application of their brain behavior. That's the missing link in this thing is we can grow smart brains, but we can have if you will, stupid or inappropriate common sense application of that intelligence. Ben, for example.
Wait a minute, this show's not about me, it's all about Jackson. We've established that. Stick with the program, Doc.
Well, thanks, Doc. I guess the other thing, and you just mentioned this a minute ago, which was taking brain breaks, and that's something that we've talked about a little bit, and I'd like to understand it better from a scientific standpoint. When I have a client that has traumatic brain injury from a car accident or some other trauma, and I know that you work very closely with your patients to try and figure out for each individual what is their tolerance for brain activity in terms of how long can they concentrate before they really do need to take a brain break, and for how long they take a brain break. And I know that among my clients it's been it varies greatly. Some of my clients have needed to take a quote unquote brain break every 45 minutes, and other people it's like every 3 hours, etc. How do you determine that? Is it just trial and error, A, and B, what's the science behind why does that help, just giving your mind a rest?
Well, it's not just giving your mind a rest, because the term brain break is a very generic term, and so it really depends on what you do during the break. So a lot of people would want to believe that taking a brain break would be being able to switch your computer over to a fun site and continue to play on your computer, or like I do, switch it over to my fantasy baseball team and see what the pitchers and batters are doing.
Or like I do porn.
Yeah, there you go.
It's a family show, Jackson.
TMI.
Kidding!
He's not, that's the worst part.
I'm a sit-down comedian, okay? So just let me do my thing.
If you would, the science behind this is that one of the things that we do know is that a concussion or a minor brain injury reduces, if you will, the reserve tank of energy in an individual. So many of us can go all day long and then get naturally a second wind when we switch tasks, like when we leave work and go home, because there's a different level of stress or stimuli coming at us, and we can use that to recharge and get the runner's high or the second wind. But a lot of people after a minor brain injury or concussion they reach in for what they need, and it's not there. So
Go ahead.
So the one thing that we do know is that one of the things that we do know is after a concussion injury, it takes more energy to do all tasks. It takes more energy to figure out what to wear in the morning, because you have to think about, especially in Santa Rosa, what the weather's going to be like. It's going to be overcast in the morning. It's going to be warm in the afternoon. It's going to get cold in the evening, or windy in the evening.
What I've heard of as decision fatigue.
Yes, decision fatigue. And so our brain operates on 2 modalities. One is our brain loves routine, okay? Because then it can fall into a routine and save energy to apply when something is interfering with that routine, or when we want to do something other than the routine. One of the things that happens with a lot of people who have a brain injury is their entire routine is disrupted. They can no longer work, their sleep is disrupted, so their entire arousal system of expending energy and recovering energy is disrupted by this concussion and by the neuroendocrine cascade that we've talked about before that goes on in a concussion.
Well, I wanted to talk about that, ask you about sleep. First off, I don't know if it's an old wives' tale or not, but you always hear and have heard for years that if you have a concussion or think you do, you shouldn't go to sleep. That's my first question, and then I have another one.
It's not that you shouldn't go to sleep, it's that you have to have somebody monitoring so that you don't, so that basically it's a disruption in the brain arousal system. So we don't want you to fall into, if you will, a comatose sleep, because there's a loss of management.
But it's somebody monitoring, watching you sleep. Is that what you're I mean, how would they know?
Well, they wake you up every hour or half hour.
I see.
And re-arouse you because your
Okay.
body isn't able, your brain isn't able to re-arouse itself.
Wow.
On the other end, your brain is also frequently not able to calm down from the stress of the day to de-arouse into sleep. So there's a real controversy over whether it's the concussion that's causing the cognitive difficulties, or it's the, if you will, negative impact of the negative consequences of the concussion, for example, sleep disruption, that maintains the cognitive distortions or the cognitive difficulties after a concussion. Because we know that if you don't get good sleep, you have all of the symptoms of a concussion over time. You're more irritable, you have mood fatigue, so you're labile in your mood, you have difficulty attention, you have difficulty organizing information, all of this stuff. So what we're doing with brain breaks is structuring time to expend energy and time to recover from energy in order to rebuild the person's management, even if it has to be done manually, of the amount of energy that they're expending and recovering in their brain system. And it's not really based on, it's not only based on rehabilitations, it's also based on like labor law that has proven over and over again that if you take two people in 8 clock hours and you give one a break every 2 hours and you give the other no breaks at all, the person that took the break over 8 clock hours, not counting the breaks, will be more productive than the person that didn't. So that's with a reserve. So when we have a concussion and in recovery, we know there's not a reserve, so we want to emphasize that. And the other real quick answer to what you were saying is, so the way that we tailor this is we take the same ratio that's natural. If you look at a 24-hour clock and you look at 8 hours of being the recovery of expended energy time of sleep, then we know sleep's not good. So we're gonna establish a sleep hygiene routine to get that better and make the expect the person to do that 7 days a week regardless of their schedule. No sleeping in, no staying up late while they're in recovery. And then we're going to take that second ratio of the 16 hours that the person is awake, and we're going to embed the same 1/3 of the time in recovery, 2/3 of the time in expended energy into that 16 hours. So the easy example would be 2 hours of paced activity, 1 hour of relaxation, meditation, and good nutrition, and then 2 hours. But it doesn't have to be 2 hours because we have to build up to that. So it can be 40 minutes and 20 minutes.
We have to take a traffic break. We'll be right back.
Oh,
I, like everyone else, has so many bizarre dreams. Sometimes I wake up laughing. Sometimes I wake up crying, but they're crazy. What is the brain doing?
For the record, I don't have that experience. Cuckoo, cuckoo.
There's 2 neurological functions of sleep.
We only have 1 minute.
Okay, the main one is one is recovering spent energy, recharging the battery. The other is, and this is what happens in dreaming, is processing all of the events in your life in a non-literal way in order to encode what's gone on into your life as to who you are and who you're becoming as a person.
Because all my friends and former wives and everybody, they recur in my dreams.
Hence the
and it's-
tears.
So that when you dream,
You're trying to figure out what to do with them.
When
No.
Steve dreams of midgets and Thousand Island dressing, Doc, what does that mean?
He's watching too much relaxation during the day.
Dr. Richard Polchasey, we got to get you back on to expound on a lot of this stuff.
Sure.
So we will do that. Ben Adams.
I think a
and
show
Jeremy
about
Feast.
dreams would be awesome.
Yeah.
Not if we have to hear about Jackson's dreams.
I got some great ones.
Yeah, we don't need to hear
Yeah,
them.
no, you do.
All right,
You're
got
good.
it. All right, we're gonna.
All right,
great.
guys, we'll see you next
See you
Wednesday.
soon.
Thanks so much for everything.
Thanks, Steve.
The
Thanks,
Law
Doc. I
Firm,
appreciate being here.
TheLawFirm.com. We'll be back on the drive.
Good show. Good show.
Good
Great
show.
stuff.
Very entertaining.
Santa Rosa,
And I
See you
learned
soon.
County.
We'll see you next Wednesday.
Yep.
We'll do something.
From ABC News.
Only 90 days till the election, so we might as well,